This is an amygdala hijack. The true nature of consciousness. I contain multitudes. Astonishing internal control. What is the self? Our bodies function through a collection of intricate and astonishing systems. I will explain the surprising features and mechanisms. The phenomenon of life is truly amazing. In this story, we are made up of many versions of ourselves, and changes or problems occurring in the body. I believe you will be able to understand the mechanism by which it is occurring. If we understand the true nature of consciousness, our perspective on health will likely change significantly. If that leads to a deeper understanding of myself, you might be able to walk through life with confidence. Once again this time, I would like to also touch upon the possibility of artificial intelligence acquiring consciousness. First, let's talk about the amazing functions of the human body that we possess. The key to body control, the nervous system. The nervous system is an organ responsible for taking in information from the external world and transmitting it to the brain. And this nervous system can transmit information at an astonishing speed. It is also constantly working within our bodies without taking a break. In the nervous system, the brain plays a central role. Therefore, the brain and spinal cord are classified as the central nervous system. The brain is composed of 20% lipids and proteins, a soft organ composed of 80% water, and it is approximately 1400 cc in size for an adult. And the brain accounts for 2% of the body's mass. This brain controls reactions to everything, both internal and external. It is an organ that can be described as precisely a data processing device. The brain thinks using environmental information obtained from the five senses, and it delivers the information necessary for body control throughout the entire body. The activity of the brain changes significantly depending on the situation. In other words, based on the time and circumstances. There are as many as 100 billion nerve cells, or neurons, in the brain. Furthermore, there are millions of neurons present in places other than the brain. The information transmission speed of neurons, which are nerve cells that convey this information, is said to be at a speed of several hundred kilometers per hour. For example, the brain responds instantly to the opponent's reactions in a conflict. That is, a fight. The brain reacts at an incredible speed and finds the optimal action in response. It is possible to move the body at a speed that can be described as almost instantaneous. To win a fight, physical strength or muscle power is important, and at the same time, quick thinking and the speed of reaction are also important. The starting point of that reaction is the eyes. The eyes are organs that capture light, and some researchers say that the eyes are a part of the brain. The eyes are organs that seem like a part of the brain has come out. When the eyes take in light from the outside world through the pupils, it identifies the light captured by the retina beyond that point. The retina is densely packed with millions of rod cells and cone cells, and when photons are received, they are converted into information that the brain can use. The information created in the retina, that is, the electrical signals, it is sent to the brain like Morse code. The brain converts that information into its actual form and conveys it to consciousness. This visual processing system is the part where the largest compression processing is conducted in biology. In short, because there is a large amount of information, it is highly abstracted to reduce the overall volume. At the tips of the connectors called synapses that extend from neurons, chemical substances and electrical signals are being exchanged continuously. The brain's adaptability. With a little practice, we can multiply our abilities in no time. In other words, the more you practice, the more your learning progresses. This phenomenon is called neural plasticity. The word plasticity is used for things like metals and plastic resins, and it refers to the property of not returning to its original state once deformed. In short, it can also be rephrased as the property of being able to form memories. This means that nerve cells are extremely flexible and capable of change. A single neuron can form 10,000 connections, and it has the ability to construct an extremely complex neural network. And then that connection changes through repetitive motion. For example, when we make a new move, the chemicals near neurons form temporary transmission pathways. When the action is repeated further, that temporary pathway becomes structured, the mechanism is such that new connections are strengthened in this way. When specific actions are repeated through repetitive motions or habituation, the increase in proficiency is due to this mechanism. You can eventually reach a level where your body moves instinctively. Riding a bicycle or walking are examples of this. You don't often see people who think about putting out their right foot and then their left foot as they walk, do you? Reinforcement learning. That being said, there are things like musical instruments and bicycles that you can remember for a long time, while there are things that are easily forgotten, like people's names. These kinds of neural connections, in other words, memory is linked to strong emotions when it is known to form strong connections. Therefore, strong emotions act as a trigger for brain growth. However, emotions can also cause a significant burden. I think everyone has had a scary experience. The emotion of fear is also one of the most effective adaptive functions for survival. In short, it is an important function for surviving as a living being. In the brain, there is a mechanism that controls fear. There is a region called the amygdala. The amygdala is approximately 1.5 centimeters in size. As soon as we face a crisis, the amygdala is activated, and then it releases various hormones throughout the body. The amygdala is under consciousness. In other words, it begins to independently control various things without our knowledge. The amygdala, immediately after feeling fear, first instruct them to open their pupils in search of light. When the pupils are dilated, it does put some additional strain on the eyes, but in this way, we increase the amount of information from the outside world. The heart is instructed to increase its beating rate in order to quickly send blood. Furthermore, it also instructs the body to send more blood to the more vital organs. For escaping or attacking, the muscles in the legs, which are directly related to athletic ability, become the destination for blood flow. Therefore, when you feel fear, your heart starts to race, and the blood flow to organs such as the digestive system, which can be postponed without issues, becomes extremely poor. At the same time, the blood flow that would normally be directed to keep the skin warm and moisturized is also reduced, so you will feel chills or get goosebumps. These changes are preparations to respond to threats. However, such human reactions do not always function smoothly. For example, if stress is excessive, that fear can completely take over both the mind and body. As a result, emotions can sometimes paralyze our bodies. This is an amygdala hijack. When this happens, the area of the brain responsible for theory and reason is shut down. The signals stop reaching the part of the brain responsible for thinking. Then, the amygdala, which operates based on instincts and emotions, begins to take control of the body, taking over from the cerebrum. This amygdala hijack is the true nature of anger and panic. It truly makes me lose myself. In other words, it's a state where you are no longer yourself. This is why we lose ourselves in the face of an overwhelmingly strong threat. That being said, it is possible to overcome the amygdala hijack. By repeatedly experiencing similar terrifying events, the amygdala becomes stronger and it helps prevent excessive amygdala hijacks. Furthermore, the amygdala also has the ability to retain a large amount of information. Memories that are accompanied by emotions are mostly remembered. It's likely because the memory of that terrifying experience is important for responding to future threats. Therefore, the amygdala instantly recalls that memory when it encounters a threat. And based on that information, the entire brain can quickly observe and make judgments about the situation. Information transmission of the brain and spinal cord. The spinal cord is like a highway for information transmission. The brain is connected to the spinal cord, and from the spinal cord, nerves extend to various parts of the body. The spinal cord is part of the central nervous system, so it is not only responsible for transmission, but also has the ability to think independently in place of the brain. When you touch something hot, your hand moves independently of your will due to a spinal reflex, which is a function of the spinal cord. Energy source. One of the things we need to live is oxygen. Even if I can't get a meal for a few days, it's not a problem, but without oxygen, our lives would not last even a few minutes. When it comes to the brain, it becomes unable to function in just about 15 seconds if the supply of oxygen stops. Oxygen is one of the important fuels for us to be active, so the body must constantly deliver that oxygen to all 38 trillion cells without exception. At the center of that role is the heart. The heartbeat generated by the heart occurs billions of times over a lifetime. It is also without ever taking a break. This pulse is synchronized with every cycle in the body, and it serves as a reference point for our body's cycles. Therefore, it can be said that the heart is an important engine within human organs that everyone acknowledges. The blood pumped from the heart is sent throughout the body via blood vessels, and the total length of those blood vessels extends to 100,000 kilometers. This is the length of 2.5 times around the Earth. The heart can also be trained to improve its performance. The heart beats approximately 100,000 times a day. The heart is made up of 2 pumps, and first, blood is sent to the lungs. After the blood completes gas exchange, it returns to the heart, and is then sent throughout the entire body. People with strong heart function also have a high capacity to transport blood, so it is known that their resting heart rate is slower. Therefore, marathon runners, for example, it is known that their pulse rate is significantly lower than that of an average person. The heart is truly a power source for us. All organs and all cells depend on the heart. Multicellular organisms like us, because it is necessary to deliver oxygen-containing energy sources to all cells. It requires a circulatory system that includes a heart like this. The human body is also designed with the premise that it is always in motion. When not exercising, the systems that humans possess do not function properly. Therefore, when humans remain still for an extended period, the entire system starts to malfunction. All bodily functions are destined to be lost if they are not used. Threat to the circulatory system. One threat to the circulatory system is gravity. Blood must constantly flow against gravity. Therefore, blood flow is only established with the movement of muscles that assist the circulation of blood. If you remain inactive for a long time, you lose the ability to return blood to the heart. That's the way it's designed, so exercise is necessary. System failure of the circulatory system. When blood vessels become blocked, serious problems can occur. An energy source that contains oxygen is the lifeline for all the cells in the body. The energy consumption of the heart is high, so when a blood vessel becomes blocked and blood flow issues occur, damage rapidly spreads. And worst of all, heart cells hardly regenerate. And the surprising fact is that red blood cells make up more than 80% of all the cells in the body. Additionally, 5 to 6 liters of blood are being circulated throughout the body every second. And at the same time as gas exchange, the plasma in the blood is collecting waste products. Incidentally, the hemoglobin contained in red blood cells is harmful to cells. Therefore, if red blood cells are destroyed, it becomes a serious situation. The first thing that a mother and baby connect through and share is often blood. The blood is delivered through the umbilical cord. So, the baby's waste products are also handled by the mother's body. The situation is similar to the mother performing hemodialysis on the baby's behalf. The thinking organ. In fact, there is a large nervous system in the heart that contains about 40,000 neurons. Therefore, the neurons in the heart can think, make decisions, and act on their own. In short, it means that it is possible to think. It actually has 4 times as many neurons as a snail. By the way, lobsters have 100,000 neurons. An ant has about 250,000 neurons. Immediate response when a problem occurs. The body is a complex of various organs, and they are perfectly in sync with each other while communicating with one another. Therefore, when the blood decreases, the heart increases the pulse, and the lungs work to make breathing shallow and fast. It releases chemicals and constricts blood vessels. By constricting, it means that blood flow can be maintained. As a result, the skin becomes pale. However, the brain is different. Not only does it have to maintain its functions, but it also requires as much as 20% to 40% of the body's total energy. Even in emergencies, it continues to operate normally without a reduction in blood supply. The body uses its reduced blood resources in this way. In order to optimally redistribute, various measures are taken. The relationship between the brain and the heart. When we panic, we can feel a disturbance in our chest. We often describe it as feeling with the heart, but when the heartbeat increases, at the same time, a large amount of information is transmitted from the heart to the brain, and the neurons in the brain receive that information. And what connects the brain and the heart is The vagus nerve is the most powerful neural network within the body and a cranial nerve. This nerve apparently also conveys emotions, which is one of the reasons why mental shock can affect the heart as well. Therefore, when you have a difficult experience, it is known that the heart can weaken rapidly. The heart feels love. When you feel love, it involves neurotransmitters. Oxytocin is secreted from the brain, and it is known that oxytocin can repair heart cells. It is said that a lack of affection can sometimes lead to serious problems. There is no doubt that there is a deep connection between the heart and the brain. The organs within the body communicate and coordinate with each other in this way. You can see that the human body has a structure similar to an ecosystem. Energy. The food we eat is ultimately fuel, and we consume energy even when we don't move. The human body, as the ultimate machine, performs astonishing tasks, while at the same time, it requires a large amount of fuel. After all 38 trillion cells constantly need energy. One of the fuels our bodies need is glucose. Glucose is found in all kinds of plants and seeds. However, extracting that glucose is difficult. The process of extraction is carried out by the digestive organs. First, energy is obtained from external sources as food passes from the mouth, through the intestines, to the anus. Humans have been able to more easily intake energy by using fire to partially break down food. Humans are the mammals most adept at long-distance travel, and it is said that the reason humans can run long distances is because they cook their food. When running, the digestive organs do not function optimally, so a diet that is easy to digest is essential for long-distance travel. When food is placed in the mouth, it is broken down by saliva and formed into a lump, then sent to the esophagus. When it reaches the stomach, the powerful acid, which can even dissolve metal, kills dangerous bacteria. It transforms solid food into liquid. Next, it is broken down into glucose in the intestines and absorbed into the bloodstream. Glucose in the blood is transported into the cells by insulin. Insulin has the role of opening the doors of cells. The sugar taken up by the cells is converted into energy and heat. By the way, when you eat in a cycle of 3 meals a day, glucose inevitably becomes the energy source. When the glucose in your body is depleted, in other words, if you don't eat for 8 hours, your body will start burning fat. If you eat 1 meal a day, it will definitely result in the utilization of fat. When you think about it that way, dieting seems kind of easy. The stomach and intestines are strongly connected to the brain, just like the heart is. The digestive process begins just by smelling or seeing food. And it is understood that the stomach and intestines are closely related to one's mood. You get irritable when you're hungry, right? It's because when glucose levels decrease in the body, adrenaline and cortisol increase. It's unclear what the purpose of this irritation is, but our ancestors likely managed to find food when they got irritated. The gastrointestinal tract, which has the enteric nervous system, is said to contain 400 to 600 million nerve cells. This number is comparable to or matches the total number of nerve cells in the spinal cord, which is part of the central nervous system. It is larger than that, equivalent to 5 times the scale of a mouse's nerve cells. This is why it is called the second brain, aside from the spinal cord. It is said that 90% of serotonin, the happiness hormone, is produced in the intestines. It is also known that many other hormones are secreted. In other words, the gut not only has a highly independent thinking system, but it can also be considered an organ that controls moods and emotions. The intestines are also home to many bacteria. Our bodies are most directly connected to the outside world through the intestines. The skin, which is the outer boundary, has various physical barrier functions. It might not be accurate to say that they are directly connected. Therefore, the boundary that can exchange various substances with the external world is undoubtedly the intestines. The intestines are also a unique place where one's own cells and external cells coexist. The bacteria that live in the intestines are referred to as the gut microbiota. There are an estimated 10 trillion or even over 100 trillion bacteria present, playing an important role. The thin mucus layer that protects the intestines contains 80% of the body's immune cells. It's 80%, it's an impregnable defense. Those immune systems assess the dangers of bacteria and protect the safety and order of those hazardous areas. The first place to manifest in the human body after birth is the intestines. And at the same time, the first organ that multicellular organisms acquired was the intestine. The most fundamental function for us multicellular organisms is the digestive system, and the tube-like structure that facilitates this is common to all multicellular organisms. It's easier to understand if you imagine it as a tube connecting the mouth to the anus. That forms our basic structure, doesn't it? The digestive organs, centered around the intestines, are like a wall that separates the inside and outside of an organism, similar to the skin. Therefore, the intestines are not only the most important organ in sustaining life activities, but they also have a significant impact on overall health. Olfaction. Inside the nose, there are cells called cilia. There, chemical substances are detected by approximately 400 types of receptors. The response pattern is sent to the brain and classified into various scents. For example, the smell of coffee is made up of more than 800 types of particles. That smell is created by a complex pattern of chemical compounds. The sense of smell can perceive scents not only through chemical substances but also through texture. Since it abstracts complex sources of information, including visual ones, into the information of scent, the sense of smell can be said to be a perceptual system that is different in nature from other senses. Most organs other than the sense of smell are processed in the thalamus, but olfactory signals go directly to a part of the brain called the olfactory bulb, without passing through the thalamus. The olfactory bulb is connected to the paleocortex, which governs emotions, so it can be said that the sense of smell is a primitive sensory system. Therefore, scent might be directly connected to emotions. The sense of smell is instinctive, isn't it? Pheromones or something like that. And there are preferences when it comes to scents. Even if you think you've forgotten a scent, the memory of it remains in the brain. And the amygdala's function allows those memories to be quickly recalled in response to smells. On the other hand, things we see with our eyes are forgotten in an instant, aren't they? 80% of information is through the eyes. The sense that most confuses humans is vision. It is precisely the darkness. There are two types of cells in the eye that receive light, called receptors. One of them is cone cells. It works in bright places and primarily detects colors. There are cone cells that are sensitive to red, cone cells that are sensitive to green, and cone cells that are sensitive to blue. The other one is the rod cell. Rod cells have the characteristic of being highly sensitive and functioning even in dark places. These are cells similar to night vision cameras. In exchange, colors are almost indistinguishable. The receptors that function in darker environments are the rod cells. Therefore, when the light decreases, things in front of you appear in black and white. It's difficult to perceive because the brain is influenced by experience and memory, but when you look at it calmly, even a slight dimming can make everything in front of you appear black and white. The existence of such cells is due to. This is because for humans, shape, namely silhouette, is more important than color. If you can understand the color but not the shape, you won't be able to respond to most threats. There is an image compression technology called JPEG. This compression technology utilizes the characteristics of human vision. Therefore, even if the colors are reduced, as long as the edges are sharp, humans cannot notice the degradation of images. The human eye takes a long time to adjust to darkness. It takes about 30 minutes to switch to night vision mode. Therefore, when it suddenly gets dark, the brain acts first. Before the receptors adapt in a situation where vision is ineffective, information other than visual information and spatial awareness function like a GPS to complement vision. The brain predicts based on limited information, and it could be thought of as creating the visuals. Furthermore, perception is. The more you consciously use it, the more you can enhance your abilities. Therefore, proactive behavior can be described as enhancing one's abilities. Exploration. When you search for something new and eventually discover it, or when you make a prediction and focus on the outcome, the brain can further strengthen its circuits. In other words, purposeful actions serve to further enhance the effects of training. When we trace the mechanisms of the human body like this, each cell communicates and collaborates with others to perform its respective tasks. It even starts to feel like a gathering of life or an ecosystem. That being said, we perceive our body as part of ourselves, and while we can't control others with our will, we can move ourselves according to our own will, right? Or at least, we think we can, right? However, with the story up to this point, in reality, we weren't consciously moving ourselves, were we? The brain doesn't control all the organs. Each organ and part of the body, and even parts of the brain like the amygdala, function autonomously, don't they? What on earth does this mean? There is a term called level of consciousness. I believe this term represents the degree of alertness or awareness, but it can also be rephrased as the resolution of consciousness. Therefore, when consciousness becomes distinctly clear, it can be described as being awake. We undoubtedly possess a single consciousness, and we can observe a decrease in the level of consciousness or a dazed state by looking at others. No. But wait a minute. Don't you wonder if something like that really exists? Is it really consciousness if it doesn't become clear and distinct? In the first place, can our own consciousness truly evaluate its own level? If your level of consciousness has decreased, can a consciousness whose abilities have declined accurately assess changes in itself? If there's a situation where I feel that my level of awareness has decreased, my consciousness might still be clear, but the incoming information could be unclear or vague, or it might take longer than usual to come up with an answer. Isn't that the kind of situation we're talking about? Of course, consciousness cannot grasp its own level of awareness, and what we refer to as consciousness, or what we recognize as consciousness, is the state of organs, including the dysfunctional parts of the brain that consciousness perceives, right? When you look up consciousness in the dictionary, it refers to a state where one can recognize their current condition and the surrounding circumstances. It involves recognizing yourself and the environment you're in, which means that what we call consciousness is essentially the act of observing. There are terms like collective intelligence and collective consciousness, but how should I say it? These terms refer to the phenomenon that occurs when a large group of people come together, creating something that seems to have its own consciousness. I believe these words originated from that idea. Therefore, we use collective intelligence as a kind of metaphor. However, in what we consider to be our singular body, there were countless cognitive functions, weren't there? As mentioned in the conversation, the numerous organs in our bodies, such as organs and nerves, are, I think you can understand that each person is recognizing, thinking, and acting. Therefore, many organs, including the internal organs, are. It can also be rephrased as an independent entity or life form with advanced cognitive functions. The spinal cord, heart, intestines, and all other organs function autonomously. So, to elaborate further, our brain is not singular either. It is understood to be a complex of various types of central nervous systems. This refers to the brain itself having many independent cognitive abilities. This means that consciousness exists. In short, it means that we are composed of countless consciousnesses. And perhaps that is true. So, what exactly is our ego? In the latest field of neuroscience, it is understood that consciousness is not identical to thought and is not synchronized with it. Until now, it was believed that conscious thinking occurred as follows. In other words, consciousness arises first, and then thinking follows in response. This was thought to be the mechanism, but when we actually observe the brain, we find that the brain thinks first, and then we become aware of that thought. A reasonable solution that can be derived from these points is, the solution is that there is no such thing as a single self in the first place. Consciousness, in essence, refers to the objects that one can see or recognize. It is something that can be recognized by observing whether you are thinking and acting on your own. Consciousness is the awareness obtained by checking the state of various organs, including the brain. It's simply a matter of understanding the situation. In other words, just observation itself. That's why it happens that consciousness lags behind thought. The phenomena and reactions triggered by cognitive functions throughout the body are received and processed by many independent parts of the brain. The results are then sent to the frontal lobe, where a comprehensive judgment is made. Therefore, it is a part of the frontal lobe of the brain that is responsible for consciousness. It seems that it was thought that way, and I thought so too. However, this time I was able to notice a completely different logic. It means that there is no specific part of the brain responsible for consciousness. The brain perceives the external world and recognizes the consciousness of other living beings, but it is also thought that in doing so, it becomes aware of its own consciousness. The reason I can say that with certainty is because, in the first place, self-consciousness is of little use for survival. The most important thing for a living organism is how it thinks and acts in response to the external world. The same goes for us primates. For example, bacteria only have the cognitive ability to detect the smell of food and move toward it. Furthermore, insects have organs such as eyes, and they also possess a complex central nervous system similar to a brain. They have the cognitive ability to act according to the situation they are currently in. When it comes to fish, reptiles and mammals, for example, they remember previous states for comparison and predict the behavior of external threats, so it can be said that they possess more advanced cognitive functions. In some reptiles and mammals, to predict the behavior of external threats, they probe the thoughts of their opponents. Does the predator have a motive to eat me? And is it likely to act soon? Through such observations and memories, they make advanced predictions that explore the thoughts of others. In short, what is important about the application of consciousness for living beings is the ability to explore the source of an external enemy's or opponent's behavior patterns. This act of probing thoughts is crucial. Therefore, the ego and self-consciousness are not fundamentally important in a significant sense. The most important thing is the thoughts of external enemies, that is, organisms other than oneself. We just need to be able to think and take the best action, whether we are conscious of it or not. The importance of the self, or one's own consciousness, must be said to be relatively low, after all. Therefore, while observing the consciousness of external enemies, one also observes one's own consciousness, or observe the results brought about by one's own cognitive functions. It can be considered that I came to understand myself as a result of going with the flow. In the future, artificial intelligence will observe the thoughts of living beings or humans, and, as it becomes highly skilled at making predictions, as a byproduct, the AI will also begin to contemplate the outcomes brought about by its own cognitive functions, and it will likely continue to make predictions. This is the mechanism of consciousness. When you think about it that way, consciousness can also be rephrased as merely an observational function of the brain. It's just about being aware and recognizing it when it works inwardly. This is supported by the brain observation results using fMRI, which showed that consciousness lags behind thought and judgment. By the way, artificial intelligence's ability to observe and accurately predict the thoughts of living beings or humans is already widely recognized as one of its areas of expertise. There is more. If consciousness is merely an observational function of the brain, then it also suggests that our consciousness is not singular, but a collective entity. Our human bodies are actually managed by being divided into halves. The left brain controls the right side of the body, and the right brain controls the left side of the body. The cause of this lies in the fact that the brain has two hemispheres. Because these two brains are working together in a highly coordinated manner, we are able to walk, and we can also see things as one with both of our eyes. There is a strange feeling, but to begin with, humans do not consciously think about breathing or making their hearts beat, and when riding a bicycle or walking, you can also do these activities while thinking about other things. In short, in the first place, the body moves on its own without conscious thought, and at the same time, you can also move it consciously. In that sense, what separates the two consciousnesses from the one consciousness is, it seems quite vague and also feels like it's not very important. There is also a surgery that involves severing the corpus callosum, which connects the left and right hemispheres of the brain. After this split brain surgery, since language ability becomes controlled only by the left hemisphere, only the input from the right visual field, processed by the left brain, as well as the sensations and action plans for the right hand, will be reported by the patient through language. However, reports that use means other than language. When combining the results of various psychological tests, such as pressing buttons or drawing pictures, the right hemisphere of the brain is also known to have abilities comparable to the left hemisphere, and for certain tasks, it may even have greater abilities. Therefore, since the right hemisphere does not possess language, it may appear that there is no consciousness. However, it is believed that the right hemisphere generates a state of consciousness independent from the left hemisphere. In short, the results of this surgery revealed that when the brain is divided into two, it splits into two separate consciousnesses. In conclusion, consciousness is a collective entity that includes organs like the spine, heart, and intestines within the body. In fact, consciousness arises throughout the entire body, centered on various parts of the brain, and the collaboration between them is extremely smooth. Additionally, since consciousness is clearly of lower priority than thought itself, it feels as though multiple consciousnesses are merged into one. Merge means to combine into one, similar to how the images from both eyes appear as a single image. The VR goggles display different images on the right and left screens, but when you look at it, it appears as one, doesn't it? This should be easier to feel or experience. Therefore, what was once thought to be a metaphor, such as the expressions touches the heart or gets angry, might actually be completely scientific and accurate. From this analysis, you could say that the heart is actually aware of it, and likewise, the intestines are also aware in their own way.